Hey, welcome to another episode of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is just all the new stuff I've acquired since I talked to you in my last video. So before I get into the new toys, I'll just quickly, recap what's been going on with me for the past week or so. As far as movies, TV, I don't think I've watched anything too riveting. I haven't been to the theater. I did pick up Avengers Endgame on Blu-ray and was able to watch all the bonus features and listen to the audio commentary. So yeah, it was pretty nice to revisit that and hear some behind-the-scenes stuff. The disc had some pretty nice featurettes on it, like a tribute to Stan Lee, and also kind of tributes to Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, these guys that are leaving these roles after being in them for so many years. I also picked up the Batman Hush animated movie. I'm a big fan of these DC animated movies for the most part. Just not too long ago, I picked up the Batman and Ninja Turtles movie, which I highly recommended. I thought that one was a lot of fun. This one less so. Like, it was okay, but there was nothing really mind-blowing about it. Hush was kind of I don't want to say a dumb story to begin with, but it was a pretty basic story. And the real appeal of Hush back in the day was that Batman was interacting with pretty much every character in the Batman universe. So there was Catwoman and Robin and Poison Ivy and the Joker and Harley Quinn and Superman. And so it's just loaded with characters. But it was the first time Jim Lee, who's a superstar artist over from Marvel, had ever really worked for DC. So the selling feature when this story was originally published, 15 years ago? Yeah, it was seeing Jim Lee draw all these guys. So now that they've adapted it into an animated movie, you obviously don't get that Jim Lee art because they've had to simplify it for animation. So it still looked nice, but it just didn't look like Jim Lee. And then you're just kind of left with that kind of whatever story. It felt very jam-packed full of stuff, but there wasn't much of a storyline to get wrapped into. Now, one thing I don't know if I appreciated or not about it was that they changed it. In the same way they changed Gotham by Gaslight, another Batman animated. The original story in Gotham by Gaslight, Batman meets his uncle we've never heard of at the start of the story, and then he's chasing down Jack the Ripper, and then at the end he unmasks Jack the Ripper and it's his uncle. Ooh, very shocking. Not really. So in the animated movie they changed the identity of Jack the Ripper so it wasn't so obvious, especially for people who had read the story before. And they do the same thing with Hush. In the comic books, they introduced Bruce Wayne's childhood friend Thomas, who, again, we've never seen before. And then right away, this new villain shows up named Hush. And you're wondering who's Hush. And they throw you a few kind of red herrings and you think it's somebody else. And at the end, it ends up being Thomas that is Hush. So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, well, I know where this is going. I wish it was gripping me a little bit more. So I was glad when they kind of threw me a curveball. But I don't know if it necessarily was an improvement to the story. So, you know, and now that I've seen it once, if I ever were to revisit the Hush animated series, even though it was nice to be surprised the first time, I would probably rather just watch a straight adaptation, you know, if I'm going to rewatch it. So, yeah, maybe check it out if you're a big fan of Hush. TV-wise, still trying to work my way through Stranger Things Season 3. So that's slow going. Also, a new season of Mindhunter just came out this past Friday. And I haven't started it yet because I just finished Season 1. It had been out for a while, but somebody really just recommended it to me because they knew Season 2 was coming out soon. And yeah, I watched Season 1 in the matter of a week or so, and I really liked it. So I'm probably going to tackle Season 2 of Mindhunter before I do Stranger Things. But yeah, I think that's about it in that world. So yeah. And today, I'm recording this a little bit here on Sunday. And this afternoon, I went to DCAF, which is the Dartmouth Comic and Arts Festival. So it's like a mini Comic-Con here for Halifax. Just one day, very small. And when I say very small, there's quite a few vendors and lots of people. I go there every year and I always find it a little too packed. I'm kind of eager to get in and get out just because it is so kind of jam-packed and crazy in there. But it's, you know, it's not, they don't have any like really big names. There's no celebrities or there's no panels. It's kind of like an art fair or something. There's a lot of local artists selling their wares. I picked up, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but this little mini comic. My friend Dave Howlett, who works at Strange Adventures, the comic shop I've plugged on here quite a few times. He did a little zine about Bob the Goon, who was Joker's #1 guy in the 1989 Batman movie. So this looks like it'll be a quick little read. There's not too many pages to it, but I'm looking forward to checking that out. Another thing that I picked up today was my friend Sean is known as the Word Burglar. If you've never heard the Word Burglar, I highly recommend you check him out. He's kind of a nerd rapper. He's got some really good videos on YouTube. So yeah, he's also a big G.I. Joe fan. And he had this G.I. Joe card of his kind of alter ego, the Rap Viper, made up. And I've shown you these cards before. There's a local artist named Chris Hemsworth, not Thor, but same name, who does these little cards, and he's done them for every G.I. Joe figure, I think from 1982 to 1987 so far. And so every couple of months he puts out a new series of each year of the G.I. Joe figures, and they're just great little cards, so it's really neat to kind of get this as a little add-on. And I also picked up the Word Burglar's new album. I can't show it to you because I left it in my car because that's the only CD player I have to really listen to it, so I'll probably listen to it on the way to work for the next few days. Although, with the purchase of the CD, I did get this cool poster to promote the new album. So he had previously had an album that was all G.I. Joe themed. This one here, at first glance, I assumed it was going to be all Transformer themed, but it's actually more like action figure themed. If you look at this picture on the bottom there, he's got a song kind of based on every one of those properties. So you see there, like there's a little Star Wars type figure, Transformer figure, Robotech figure, GoBot figure, Visionary there. So there's songs that have to do with all of this stuff, and it's a pretty fun listen. I've only heard about half of it so far on the drive home from Decaf. But yeah, check out the Word Burglar stuff, and yeah, get in touch with either Sean Jordan, the Word Burglar, or Dave Howlett if you want to track down your own copy of Bob the Goon. And besides all the other local artwork there, there's also a lot of just vendors selling toys and stuff. And my friend Glenn, I could probably just go to Glenn's house. He lives actually in my neighborhood and buy stuff from him, but I never do. I only ever see Glenn at this Decaf, and every year I pick up some of his old G.I. Joes. And this year was no exception. So I guess we'll start getting into the section of the show where I show you all my new toys. And the first thing we'll take a look at is these G.I. Joes that I picked up from Glenn today. So yeah, let's take a closer look at this stuff. So here's the first set of figures I picked up today. So this here, as you can see, is Cobra Commander. And it's what looks like Baroness, but she's called Chameleon. So these G.I. Joes here came out in 2000. Now the vintage G.I. Joe line, that came to an end in 1994. And then in 97 and 98, they kind of brought these old G.I. Joes back. And it was just repaints of already released figures from the 80s. And they put them in 3-packs. And they were, I think, maybe exclusive to Toys R Us, and there was only a handful of them. I think they had some degree of success. And then after those 2 years, it kind of went away again for a little while. And then in 2000, they came back again with these 2-packs instead of 3-packs. And you can see here some of the figures that were featured. So again, these are all like known characters: Firefly, Hawk, Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes. And they were all just repaints of vintage figures from the 80s. So there was no new parts, no new tooling. It was a cheap way for Hasbro to get some G.I. Joes out on the shelves. And yeah, I didn't really pick up any of these at the time. I didn't really feel the need to buy repaints of toys I already had. So yeah, I largely ignored these at the time. But I have gone back and picked up a few cents. And I remember at last year's Decaf, this was one of the sets that Glenn was selling, and I picked it up and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, you know what, I don't really need this one. But then afterwards, I did kind of regret it, because this figure is the only version of Chameleon that has ever been released. So I don't have any version of her in my collection, and I kind of thought, yeah, if he still has that by chance next year, I'm going to pick it up. And sure enough, he still had it. So here it is, Chameleon and Cobra Commander. So yeah, this is a straight repaint of the Baroness figure that first came out in, what was it, 83 or 84. The only difference is that they've added the red paint to her, because the original figure was just solid black. And why they called her Chameleon, I'm not sure if it's because they maybe had temporarily lost the rights to the name Baroness, but yeah, they came up with this new bio for her, and yeah, she was a whole new character, and yeah, so that's pretty cool. And she was later featured in the G.I. Joe comics published by IDW, and she was treated quite uniquely from the Baroness. So even though that is just a Baroness figure with a little bit of red paint, it felt a little bit more integral to have to the collection once she'd been her character had been filled out a little bit more in the comic books. And then this Cobra Commander, I think the original release of this version of Cobra Commander was in blue, and so here he is in black. And yeah, he's pretty cool. And these guys here, I am probably just going to keep in the package. So that's why I'm not going to pop them open and show them to you. Just because I don't have any vintage G.I. Joes on display, so it seems kind of pointless to open these guys up just to throw them in a bin. So this way I can put a little thumbtack in there and stick it up on my wall, and I can have these guys for display. So there you go, Cobra Commander and Chameleon from 2000. So the Real American Hero collection of 2-packs continued on in 2001. So I also picked up this set. This is one of the 2001 sets. So here is Zartan, which is pretty much a repaint of the original Zartan. He does have a different chest piece there, though. I'm not sure if that's the only difference. But he does the paint job on him just looks different from the original. But he still has that that face mask so he can change his identity. And then we've got the Shadow Viper, which I think it's a straight repaint of what was originally called the Astro Viper. So, or was he the Laser Viper? I'm blanking. I think he's Astro Viper. Anyway, I'm not sure why they call him Shadow Viper now. But yeah, so he's a different paint scheme. And I don't have either of these figures in my collection. I think I have the original Zartan and the original Astro Viper. But yeah, so these guys I just thought were kind of neat. Glenn had pretty much all of these packs. So I could have got the Cobra Commander and Laser Viper pack or the Lowlight and Surefire. But, and who knows, that'll give me something to pick up next year maybe. But for now, I just grabbed these guys, and yeah, I thought they were pretty cool. And the last pack I picked up today is actually from 2002, and this is with the new relaunch of G.I. Joe. So while those other packs were just kind of anniversary figures, when Hasbro relaunched G.I. Joe in 2002 with a G.I. Joe versus Cobra line, and they had new sculpted figures, it was kind of a new design. It was for the most part compatible with the vintage figures, but it was just nice to finally get some new sculpts. Although mixed in with those new sculpts, they took some vintage figures and kind of continued the repaints. So like this here, you'll see that's Headman, which is the evil like drug lord that G.I. Joe fought in the 90s, complete with his little ponytail and zoot suit. And then we've got this version of Hawk. And so yeah, both these are vintage figures. They haven't been changed much at all. I think sculpt-wise it's the exact same as the originals. Just repainted. The original Headman was all black. And you know what? I don't think I have that one. So this is the first Headman I've ever actually had in my collection. And like the other ones, I'll probably keep this carded because I don't have any figures from this era on display either. The only G.I. Joes I have on display are those guys that you always see in the background there, which are the modern era G.I. Joes. So they're a little bit taller, a little bit more detailed. So yeah, these ones from 2002 were still kind of in the vintage style. And yeah, I just don't have anything from this era still on card. So yeah, this is kind of a neat little relic that will be just neat to pin up to the wall. So there you go. Those are my new vintage G.I. Joes. Thanks a lot, Glenn, for providing those to me. Now the next new figure I want to talk about is actually not something I got this week. I got this a few weeks ago, and I think I just forgot to mention it in any of my previous videos. So I'm showing it to you here. And who knows, maybe I even did show it in a video already, so I apologize if this is a repeat. But anyway, this is SpiderHam. He is the pig version of Spider-Man. And yeah, this was, I think, a Toys R Us exclusive, maybe. So yeah, I picked him up at Toys R Us the other day. So let's pop him open and take a look at him. So here is SpiderHam out of the packaging. And yeah, you can see he's a bobblehead. All of the Marvel Funko Pops are bobbleheads, which is the main reason I don't really buy any of the Marvel ones. I don't really like the bobble. But I think they have to do that for licensing reasons. Same as with the Star Wars Pops. But anyway, every now and again I will buy a Marvel Pop. And this one, when I saw it, I just couldn't resist. I love SpiderHam. you know, the SpiderHam comic book didn't run for very long, maybe 2 years. And it happened to coincide with right when I started collecting comic books. So the same time I started collecting Spider-Man, I started collecting SpiderHam. So yeah, I just think it's really cool that I now have 2 SpiderHam figures, because I have this one here, and I also have the one that they released in Marvel Legends earlier this year too, or last year. So yeah, 2 SpiderHams. And there's even more than this available. When you go to Walmart, they have some SpiderHams from some of the kiddier toy lines. And yeah, I just think it's great. I'm tempted to buy them all, but this is probably sufficient for the time being. But yeah, SpiderHam, great character, and yeah, really happy to have a couple of them on my display. So another thing I got this week is this 2-pack of Leonardo and Shredder from NECA. And I had pre-ordered this from EB Games, which is like GameStop here in Canada. And I'm now kind of regretting not pre-ordering all 4 packs. So you can see there's Michelangelo and Raphael that both come with a foot soldier, and Donatello comes with Krang. The thing is, I'm buying a lot of toys. If you watch my videos regularly, you know that I do. And Ninja Turtles is just one of the lines that I'm not super passionate about. It kind of came around late in my childhood, and I kind of decided this was maybe a line I wasn't going to continue to collect. I was actually considering boxing up the Turtles that I currently do have on display. But just around the time I decided to do that, they started showing all kinds of cool new Turtle figures. And so when NECA showed these ones, which are based on the old animated series, I thought, well, you know what? For nothing else, I'll get this for the Shredder. Leonardo happens to be my favorite Turtle anyway, so I'm glad the 2 were paired together. But I just feel we've never had a decent Shredder figure. Like, some of the other Turtle figures I have, I think are pretty decent versions of them. But even in the old toy line, I never really liked that Shredder, and every toy line that's come since. So I thought this was finally a great Shredder, so that's why I decided to get this pack. And when EB Games called me the other day, they said they only got in whatever Turtles people had pre-ordered. So there wasn't the option to pick up the other ones. So yeah, if I do eventually see them on the shelves somewhere, I might pick up some more. But that will maybe depend on how cool this one is. So why don't we open it up and take a look at these figures. Alright, so here's Leonardo outside of the packaging. And I gotta tell you, first impressions, it's pretty great. His legs are maybe a little tough to pose. Like, I think he could maybe use some rocker ankles so his feet could kind of turn a little bit, because I think it would be easier to get him to stand with a wider stance. Otherwise, that's what the articulation looks like in the leg there. Double jointed knees, maybe, by the looks of things. And yeah, he's a little stiff right now, but that's because he's brand new and I don't want to break him right now, but he's pretty posable. And yeah, he looks great. Like, he looks like he just leapt right out of the cartoon. You know, the painting really adds to that, besides the sculpt. And yeah, so he's got his 2 swords. They fit nicely in his hands. And then he's got sheaths for the sword on the back, so you can store both of his swords back there. Yeah, it just looks pretty awesome. And for additional accessories besides the swords, he also came with 2 of these open palm turtle hands. So I guess if you want him to do some karate chopping. So yeah, he's got 2 of those. And then he also came with this turtle communicator, which is something they used, I think, on the regular in the old cartoon. So that's pretty cool as well. And yeah, I like this guy a lot. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that the cartoon is my favorite version of the Turtles, but it's definitely one that I grew up with and familiar with. I still have the vintage Leonardo figure, so this is the original Playmates figure from back in the 80s. And yeah, he's pretty cool too. And then this is the figure from the reboot, not the current one, but the one beforehand, which I didn't watch the show, but I thought the figures were really cool. So here's kind of the modern Leonardo. And I was pretty happy with that. I liked it because the Turtles looked a little tougher and a little grittier. I liked that they didn't have the pupils in their eyes, the bandages around their hands and feet. So I have all 4 Turtles in the vintage style and this style. And I was pretty happy with this being the upgrade to the Turtles. But you can clearly see that this new Leonardo, he definitely wins out in some style points compared to that one. There's just the level of detail on this guy. A lot more articulation, a lot more accessories. Even just the detail in the swords. Like, the fact that it's got multiple paint apps, it's kind of dark gray and then brown and then silver on the top, you know, as opposed to these are just silver and the old one was just brown. Just looks pretty great. So yeah, I wasn't expecting this to be my favorite version of Leonardo, because I do like both of these ones quite a bit, but yeah, now that I'm seeing them all beside one another, I like the height of this one, I like the detail. So yeah, now I really do kind of wish I did get the rest of these turtles. Hopefully I will get the chance to get them later. And yeah, while we're on the topic of turtles, I just want to quickly mention some news that came out this weekend. Is Super 7, that's the company that makes the Masters of the Universe figures, and they make reaction figures. A while ago they revealed that they got the license to Ninja Turtles, but we didn't really know what that was going to look like. A month or so ago they revealed what the Ninja Turtles reaction figures were going to look like, which are the little 5-point articulation figures that look like vintage Star Wars figures. And you know, it's neat that they're making those, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But they just revealed this weekend that they're making Masters of the Universe classic style figures of Ninja Turtles, not based on the cartoon, because I guess NECA has the rights to that, but it's going to be based on the vintage toy line. So they're making figures, really nice, like 6-inch high quality figures based on these designs. So yeah, I'll pop a picture of those up right now, and you can see the designs that they showed for Raphael, Baxter Stockman, Foot Soldier, and some of the other figures you're going to see here are from the Conan movie line, which is another license they just revealed. So these are like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. So they revealed 3 of their figures from those lines, and these all look pretty great. So yeah. Anyway, aside from those, now let's move on and take a look at Shredder from this 2-pack. Okay, so I feel I might have a little trouble getting this guy to pose properly as well, even though he does have the rocker ankles that I just mentioned that I wish Leonardo had. So his feet do pivot a little bit, but I'm still in a little trouble getting him to do a good wide stance that will hold him up. But that aside, yeah, you can tell this is an awesome Shredder figure. I'd say this is easily the best Shredder figure we've ever gotten from any company. So again, this is based on the old cartoon. It's not based on the vintage toy, because the vintage toy, if you remember, was shirtless. He had more blue on him. I think his helmet was blue and purple or something. I never really liked the look of that toy. Plus he was kind of hunched over. It was just kind of weird. And the toys they've made from other lines, like he looked almost smaller than the Ninja Turtles, which I never liked. It just, yeah, it never worked for me. But this guy here looks fantastic. Like the way he's painted, like Leonardo, it kind of gives him that animated look. It's kind of like cel-shaded painting. He's got a cloth cape, which hangs really nice and looks pretty good. Isn't always the case when you deal with soft goods like this, but it works really well with him. Head sculpt looks awesome. Little spikes are good, not sharp at all. It's all very soft, rubbery plastic. And yeah, for accessories, so he's got a sword there. Whoops. And he also came with a bunch of alternate hands. So you can do closed hands, and it looks like closed fists, and then kind of, I don't know, karate chop hands. And he came with a canister. I'm guessing this is a canister of ooze or mutagen. And then he came with a communicator as well, which is really neat. And you can see Krang's little face in there. So yeah, you can have him hold his communicator and radio back to Krang. And I just want to bring Leo back up here again for a sec. Whoops. Anyway, so just size-wise, you can see Shredder is taller than the Ninja Turtles, and that's the way I feel it should be. You know, the fact that they're turtles aside, they're teenagers. So I really didn't like how in those new stupid live-action movies the turtles were these giants. This is the size and the scale that I'm happy with. And yeah, I think these look great. This would be a really cool line if it carries on. I know they've already shown, besides the one I already talked about and showed you on the back of the packaging, there's also going to be a Bebop, a Rocksteady, a Metalhead, a Leatherhead, a Casey, and an April. So we already know those are coming. And yeah, if they continue to put these out, I just might be forced to collect this whole line. Although I will be curious to see some more of what Super 7's putting out. I really don't want to have to collect 2 turtle lines at the same time. But yeah, if the toys are really good from both companies, I guess what are you going to do? So there you go. That's Leonardo and Shredder. Okay, so the next bunch of things I have to show you all came in a big box from Big Bad Toy Store this week. I've been letting stuff accumulate in my pile of loot over there. If you've never shopped from Big Bad Toy Store online, I highly recommend it. And one of the best features is that they do let you accumulate things in a pile of loot, so that way everything you buy you don't have to have shipped out right away, because shipping can be pretty expensive, especially up here in Canada. So I usually wait until I know I've got a big full box of stuff, and then I tell them to ship it, and then I get a discount on shipping. So yeah, I got a big box from them, and this one here is Godzilla, based on the vintage arcade game, or maybe it was the vintage Nintendo game, whatever it was. It's a video game version of Godzilla. So there you see him. And like the other Godzillas I've gotten recently, he's got a little Velcro window box. Now, I did already open this thing up. I just didn't have time to shoot a video this week, and I just couldn't bear to wait and do it on video. So I did already open him up. You can see he's got some of the cool graphics, or I guess cool graphics, vintage graphics at least, from the game in there. And so yeah, let's take a look at this Godzilla. Alright, so here is Video Game Godzilla outside of the packaging. And yeah, he's pretty cool. Like, I've really kind of been won over by these NECA Godzilla figures recently. If you've been watching my recent videos, I did get 2 of these guys just in the last couple of months. I got the Godzilla vs. King Kong version, and then more recently I got the original Godzilla, but painted in green movie color posters, so it was kind of a stylized version of the original Godzilla. And yeah, now I've got this video game one, and I actually have a couple other versions of Godzilla on pre-order. Yeah, for a while I was reluctant to buy these 6-inch Godzilla figures, just because I like my Godzilla figures to be a little bit bigger. You know, these guys are only the same size as Marvel Legend figures, and it just seems too small for Godzilla. But realistically, they're making such cool Godzilla figures, and if they made all of these at like 12 inches or more, for one, I don't know if I could afford to collect all of them, and I don't know if I'd have the space for them. So now that I kind of see what they're doing, and that they plan to do a Godzilla pretty much for every unique look he's ever had, it makes sense to do it in this scale, because it's just easier to display them at this size. And yeah, so what makes this guy Video Game Godzilla is you can see that the painty pixelization. So all these little squares are supposed to represent the 8-bit graphics, I guess, of the video game. But besides all that, he does have this unique head sculpt. And it's pretty great. Mouth opens up. He's got lots of good articulation on there. Same as the other Godzillas we've seen recently from NECA. Yeah, he's pretty cool. I dig it. I would bring up another one here for comparison, but they're kind of tucked away right now. And knowing that I've got a couple of more of these coming in the next little while, maybe I'll wait till I've got them all, and then I'll bring them all out here for a comparison video. But yeah, there you go. That's Video Game Godzilla. Now here's the next thing I got from Big Bad Toy Store. And this one I was on the fence about. And again, I already opened this up too. So normally there's a window here and you could see the toy, but now you're just seeing the transforming instructions. So this here is a third-party transformer. And if you're not familiar with what that means, basically there's all kinds of these companies that have popped up that make transformers of, you know, Transformer characters that we all know, like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, except they can't call them that because basically they're bootlegs. They're not legally allowed to really make those characters. I'm not sure why Hasbro lets them get away with it as they do, because it's clearly Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. Like, the likenesses are right there, and the names are usually even pretty close. But they've been doing this for years now, and there have been some awesome figures that have come from these third-party companies. So this one here, the company that made that, I guess it's Iron Factory. And the figure, this is supposed to be a character called Tarn. Now they can't use the name Tarn, and if they did, I guess that would probably get Hasbro's lawyers on them a little faster. So this guy's called Dubhe, or Dubhe, I don't know. But yeah, what that name means, I have no idea. But there you'll see the figure. I'm not going to transform him for you, so there you can see his alternative mode, which I guess is some sort of maybe space tank or something. But yeah, this character here, so he's not from the vintage Transformers toy line. He was introduced in the comics published by IDW. And so Tarn was the leader of the Decepticon Justice Division, the DJD. And, well, here, let me bring the figure out here. So here he is. So, hopefully you can get a good look at him here. But he's like a pretty, like, big guy. Those big treads on his shoulder pads really make him kind of a menacing figure. Having that giant double cannon on his forearm. More guns on his back. Like, he looks like a pretty big, scary Transformer. And, yeah, you'll see his face. He's actually got the Decepticon logo, or at least a stylized version of the Decepticon logo, as his face. So, yeah, as I was saying, he was introduced in the comic books as part of the Decepticon Justice Division. And they hunt down Decepticons who have betrayed the Decepticon cause, and then they torture and destroy them. So the IDW comic books were largely set after the war was over. So almost all the Decepticons, you know, to some degree had essentially betrayed the Decepticon cause, at least in Tarn's mind. So he was hunting down these old Decepticons, and yeah, he was a really cool, unique character that was introduced into the universe. And I'm sure I'm not the only fan that really wanted a figure of this guy. And yet I don't know why Hasbro never gave us one. Because they seem to be pretty in tune a lot of the times between the comic books and the toys. Way more so than other brands like G.I. Joe. Like when things like the Combiner Wars and the Titans Return toy lines were happening, there were storylines in the comic book that coincided right with those. So you'd see a character in the toy shelves, and then he was appearing in the comic books like the same month or so. So there was definitely some communication between the toy guys and the comic guys. But then there'd be characters like this, and you're like, they made up this really awesome new character. Why aren't they making a toy of this guy? So I had to turn to the third-party creators here, and there was one company that made a really cool Tarn, and I wanted it, but it was like $200+, and I still considered it because I often find these guys are worth it. Like, I know they're made in small numbers, so I appreciate that they're going to cost more, but the quality is always much better than what Hasbro gives us because they're not mass-produced. There's a lot of care that goes into these things. So yeah, I was considering paying the $200 for them. But then I kind of sat on it too long, and Big Bad Toy Store sold out of those things. But then this other company came along, the Iron Factory, and they had this version for sale. And he was only like $35 US, I think. And so the price was right for that, so I pulled the trigger on that. But I knew he was going to be small. And he is small. Like, let me bring up a couple of Transformers here to show you for comparison purposes. So here you see Tarn, and he's standing between one of the Transformer cassette tapes and Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons. So you can see, even though in the comic books he was hunting down Megatron, he really doesn't look like he'd be much of a threat to Megatron as far as this toy goes. He might be a threat to a cassette tape, but even then, this guy looks like he could maybe beat this guy up. I was talking about how thick this guy was with those big shoulder pads. This guy's got some pretty big shoulders too, so I don't know. It would be a close fight. So anyway, I would have preferred the bigger version. This is a character that deserves to be big and menacing on a shelf. And even though I missed him at Big Bad Toy Store, I could have got him on eBay or something. But, who knows, maybe I still will. But I thought I would at least try out this company, Iron Factory, and see what their version was like. And it is really, really good. Like, despite its size, the detail on this thing is really great. And the posability, like, he's got really good good movement. He can do a lot of stuff here. It's very posable. And I think both versions do this, but it's more impressive in this small scale. But the storyline featuring Tarn is, you knew that this thing here was a mask, and it was kind of an ongoing mystery over who Tarn was, and it wasn't revealed basically until right near the comic book ended on who this guy was under the mask. And so this mask actually does come off. It's just got a little peg. Whoops. I just lost his mask in his chest there somewhere. Anyway, so there you can see his head. I forget actually what character it was supposed to be. It's not like a mainstream Transformer, but it was an established character. But you can see he's got a head that kind of looks like Starscream or something on there, and it's scarred, which is part of the reason why he wore the mask. And yeah, the fact that they were able to pull that off at this small scale is really impressive. So yeah, even though he might not fit in with my other Transformers, just the fact that I wanted a figure of this character, I'm pretty happy with this thing here. So I might still get the big one, but I'm not at all disappointed with this small one. And I just managed to shake the mask free, and I just realized that might even be meant as a storage for the mask. If you wanted to display this guy without the mask, it would make sense that there's somewhere to put it without losing it. And it kind of fits perfectly in that little slot there. So whether that's intentional or not, it's, yeah, that's pretty cool. So I will be displaying him with the mask, but if you have this figure and you want to display him without, you can just tuck it away safe in there. So there you go. Here is Dubhe, or as I prefer, Tarn. Now these two figures here are the only two vintage GoBots I still have from my childhood. I showed you these recently because I actually recently got this guy, which is another vintage GoBot from the 80s that I had as a kid, but I had since got rid of. But I just found another version of this recently, so I picked him up. And yeah, so the GoBots, they were kind of the, you know, red-headed stepchild of Transformers. They were produced by another company, but they came out right around the same time. They had their own cartoon, and I liked them quite a bit. The toys were smaller and simpler, but they've kind of been forgotten other than by hardcore fans, as most people just remember Transformers, as it was a much more successful toy line. Anyway, I would really like to see GoBots come back. I'd love to see it at a mainstream, just like this essentially, even if they re-released the vintage ones so they became easy to find. I love that they had these little chrome metal pieces and everything like that. They're just, they were a lot of fun. Anyways, there's no signs of GoBots making a comeback anytime soon. Although there was recently a GoBot comic book published by IDW, which was actually pretty great. It was zany stuff. Like, I expected it to be weird because the guy that wrote and drew it has traditionally done some weird stuff, but this was really out there. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the GoBots comic, make sure you do. Anyway, since there's no sign of any official re-release of the GoBots, I've been really excited to see some of these third-party companies revisit GoBots as well. So you'll see here, this is a third-party company's version of Screwhead, which is a classic GoBot, which I don't have the figure here, but he looked a lot like those guys. He was small, he had some chrome metal on him. So I can't remember the company that made this version of him. But, so even though he doesn't look 100% like the original one, you can definitely tell who it's supposed to be. And, you know, he's a little bigger, he's a little better quality, he's more posable. So yeah, if you were a Screwhead fan, this is a pretty nice update. Now for this guy here, Sidekill, this is another third-party company that designed this version of him. So this was an upgrade complete with chrome metal. You can see how much bigger he is. This is one of my favorite Transformer figures that I have. I absolutely love this thing. So yeah, this one, if you want to track it down, it's actually called Salmore is the name they gave it because they can't call it Sidekill. I think you could probably still find it online at places like Big Bad Toy Store, but it is just an awesome figure. Anyways, the company that's making, the company that made this guy, so I've got another one from that company, and I'm looking at the box right now. I'm still not even sure what it's called. Anyway, I just got another one, and here it is. So they call this guy Steam Robo, and he is a redo of the vintage GoBot Loco, who turned into a train. And so yeah, this is their updated version of Loco. And yeah, my brother Doug had the vintage Loco when I was a kid. I liked him a lot. The color scheme with the black, the red, you know, is a very sharp looking robot. But yeah, he was this size, you know, just about 3 inches tall, had some chrome on him. Yeah, he was cool. But this new version of him is superior. So there we go. Here's the new Loco, or Steam Robo. And I think this guy is really cool looking. Like, it's clearly Loco. Like, I know who this is as soon as I look at him. But yeah, he's upgraded and he's bigger. Now, what's odd is he's actually quite a bit bigger than even Screwhead. So even though these guys are from like the same line, It looks like maybe the company that's making them has decided to up their game and add a little bit more detail. So going forward, if they keep making these, I hope they are more to this scale as it is. I think this is quite a bit of an improvement over this one here. Now, mind you, I really like these. I would buy a whole bunch of these guys here, but I think the company that made him hasn't done any other GoBot redos, so that's too bad. But yeah, I'd be just fine with this. In fact, the same company has done a version of him, which I'm actually considering getting. Even though Salmore is so cool, I really like the look of these figures. So let me get all these guys out of here for a sec. So yeah, just very cool. I don't know what more I can really say about him. His alt mode looks really cool too. Like, I dig that train. I never really transform my Transformers, and I'm not going to transform this guy, but it's a pretty nice train mode. And yeah, it's a very nice robot mode. His only accessory really is a little pistol that he came with here. But he's got lots of good posability, which is not something that the vintage GoBots had. So even his toes there, he can move. Allows you to get him in some cool poses. Anyway, I like him a lot, and I'm looking forward to getting more of these figures. My all-time favorite GoBot was Coptor here, so I'm really hoping that one of these companies gives me a cool version of Coptor. Anyway, if it wasn't going to be my favorite one, if you asked me what other GoBot I would like to see redone, Loco here was probably in my top 5 anyway, so I'm glad to see we got him, and I'm looking forward to getting some more. So next I'm going to take it the last thing I got in my Big Bad Toy Store shipment was some Office figurines. So let's check those out. So here is a Toby versus Michael 2-pack. This is the only 2-pack they've done so far. I think it's kind of funny that they paired these two characters together in a versus box. And then for the individual boxed figures, we got Jim. And then we got Pam. And Daryl. And then we got Dwight. And lastly, we got Kevin Malone. So these are all the Office figures so far. So now let's take a look at them outside of the box. So first up, we've got the star of the show. So this is Michael Scott. He's played by Steve Carell, and he, of course, is the boss, or the regional manager of the Scranton branch of Dunder Mifflin. So, let's see here. Nothing too special here. He's got his tie, no jacket. And honestly, this figure, if I just put this on my desk, I don't think anybody would really be able to guess that this is Michael Scott. It doesn't really have any distinguishing features, or the hairstyle isn't really definitive to say that that looks like Michael Scott. There is another version of him available that just came in a box by itself, but I choose to get this version because it came in a 2-pack with Toby, and that's the only way to get Toby. And I didn't really feel I needed 2 Michael Scotts right off the bat, so I decided to pass on the other one. But I think the other one is more recognizable, partly because he's wearing a full jacket as well, and he's also got his World's Best Boss mug on there, which would really make you understand that this was him. However, there's some other versions of him already coming out as well, such as his Prison Mike outfit and his Christmas outfit and Date Mike. And yeah, hopefully they keep making more, and I will probably end up getting a few more of these. So yeah, there's Michael Scott. And as I mentioned, he came in a 2-pack with Toby Flenderson. He's the HR guy that Michael hates for no apparent reason. And you can see there, he's holding the rock with a little post-it note that says, "Suck on this," which is from the episode Goodbye Toby, when he was leaving the office. And that is the going away present that Michael got him. So yeah, this does a pretty good job of representing Toby. I think it looks more like Toby than that looks like Michael Scott, partly because he's just got those sad eyes, a little balding patch there, and the suit is, that's the kind of suit that Toby wore most of the time, so that's a pretty good Toby. And then we'll move on to the real heart of the show. So we've got Jim Halpert, as played by John Krasinski, and you'll see here, he's got a little sticker on his chest that says Dave, and that is from one of the Halloween episodes. Jim kind of famously wore really lazy Halloween costumes. One episode he just wrote a book on his face because he was going his Facebook, and Dwight called him Bookface. And another time he just had 3 black circles on his shirt, and he was a 3-hole punch Jim. So yeah, this is one of his lazy costumes where he just said he was going as Dave, which is nobody in particular that I'm aware of. And so again, on its own, especially if it didn't have that little name tag, I don't know if you would know that was Jim if you just saw this figure standing on a shelf somewhere. But that's kind of bound to happen with like figures like this that are just wearing normal clothes. It's not like he's wearing like, you know, a Spider-Man outfit or something like immediately recognizable and iconic. So I think that's okay for these figures, but generally I prefer my pop figures to be immediately recognizable. But once they're displayed all together, I think you would know who these people are. So then we've got Jim's true love, Pam Beasley. And this one here, I don't think it's from any specific episode. It's pretty standard Pam wearing her little sweater and skirt. And yeah, again, I wouldn't know this was supposed to be Pam if I just had this figure alone on my desk. But once she's there with Jim, I think it's pretty obvious who that is. And next up, I get Dwight Schrute, as played by Rainn Wilson. Again, I don't think this is any specific to any particular episode, because this is pretty much what Dwight wore every episode. So yeah, that's the perfect kind of standard Dwight. Then we've got Daryl Philbin. So he's the warehouse guy that's played by Craig Robinson. And you'll see here he's got a clipboard that says game at 1 p.m. I think that's from the episode called Basketball, where Michael challenges all the warehouse guys to a basketball game against the salesman upstairs. And I think that's a great figure. Even if I didn't have any of the other Office figures, I think as long as you're familiar with Craig Robinson and The Office, you would know that's who that was. I think out of all of them, well, and maybe Dwight, they're the most recognizable as the characters that they're supposed to be. And lastly, I've got Kevin Malone, as played by Brian Baumgartner. And here you'll see he's got his oven mitts and this big pot of chili. That is from kind of just the cold open to the episode Casual Friday, where he was bringing his world-famous chili into the office and he ended up spilling it out all over the floor and slipping in it. And yeah, made for a pretty sad and kind of gross scene. And honestly, I would probably prefer that they didn't do these episode-specific things, because when I display these guys now, Kevin's just going to always be wearing oven mitts and have this pot, which I'd rather just a standard Kevin. But anyway, so there you go. Those are my Office guys. I'm going to bring all these into my office and display them on my desk. And I think they'll fit in nicely with the guys I already have on my desk from Office Space. So yeah, I've got all 5 Office Space figures. And yeah, they blend in pretty good, I think. So yeah, so there you go. There's my Office crew. And I hope that we get the rest of these guys soon enough. They've already previewed a version of Andy, so I'll be able to add at least one new character, and hopefully everybody else follows soon. So that's my new stuff for this week. Thanks a lot for watching. As always, please feel free to like and leave a comment. And yeah, I'm hoping for my next video to maybe do something a little different. Seems like I've just been doing a lot of these, what I call just general videos, where I just show you what I get this week. And I appreciate everybody that watches, but you know, they don't tend to get a ton of views. It's more like when I focus on a specific thing and review a whole wave of G.I. Joes, a whole wave of Marvel Legends, something like that, that gets some attention. So I think I'm going to maybe try and go back to doing one of those videos next. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, speaking of that, one of my videos was a review of all the Pacific Rim Kaiju figures from the first movie. And that is by far my most popular video that I've ever posted. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. But yeah, it's passed 8,000 views now, which is pretty crazy, because this video will probably get like 25 views when all said and done. So yeah, my total views for all, what is it, 47 videos or something now? So I'm up to over 15,000 views, which seems great to me. I appreciate everybody watching. And I'm over 150 subscribers now, which is also great. So thank you to everybody that's been watching, subscribing, liking, and commenting. Please keep doing so. And if there's anything you want to see in particular, I've got lots of toys I can talk about. So yeah, if you want to see more Masters of the Universe or more G.I. Joe or more whatever, just let me know. And yeah, I'll try and cater to what you guys want to see. So until next time, ciao.